In a world of wealth and secrets, a white socialite's shocking choice tears twin sisters apart. One embraced, one abandoned for her skin. Follow their divergent paths, one spirals into chaos, the other rises to CEO stardom. What happens when truth reunites them? Can love heal old wounds? Share your guesses below. Where are you listening from? Hit that subscribe button for our latest gripping tales and drop a comment to join the journey. Will betrayal or redemption win? Stick around to uncover the twists. Don't miss the drama. The Vandermeer estate loomed like a palace of whispers, its marble columns gleaming under the moon's pale gaze. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the kind that clung to velvet drapes and crystal chandeliers. Lady Eleanor Vandermeer, a vision of porcelain beauty and cold grace, lay in a private birthing suite, her silk gown damp with sweat. Her husband Roland, the titan of Vandermeer Enterprises, paced the hall outside, his polished shoes clicking against the parquet floor. The clock struck midnight, and a storm brewed beyond the stained glass windows, as if the heavens themselves sensed the weight of what was to come. Eleanor's screams pierced the silence, sharp and primal, echoing through the sterile room. The midwives, cloaked in starch white, moved with practiced precision, their faces masks of professionalism. But when the first child emerged, a hush fell. The baby girl, delicate as a snowflake, had skin so pale it seemed to glow, her tiny curls framing a face that promised to mirror her mother's aristocratic beauty. Eleanor, exhausted but triumphant, reached for her daughter, naming her Ysmeine, a name as elegant as the legacy she would inherit. The midwives cooed, their relief palpable. The Vandermeer lineage was secure. Then came the second birth. Mere minutes later, and the room froze. The second girl was identical to Ysmeine in every way. Same delicate nose, same Cupid's bow lips, same curling lashes. But her skin was a rich, deep ebony, like polished mahogany under candlelight. The midwives exchanged glances, their hands trembling as they wrapped the child in a soft blanket. Eleanor's eyes widened, her breath catching in a gasp that bordered on horror. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice a blade slicing through the room's fragile calm. The midwives lowered their gazes, unsure how to answer. The child's dark skin was an enigma, a defiance of the pale lineage Eleanor had so carefully curated. Roland was summoned, his broad frame filling the doorway. His eyes darted from Ysmeine, cradled in a silver bassinet, to the second child, held tentatively by a midwife. "Twins," he murmured, his voice a mix of awe and confusion. But Eleanor's face twisted, her beauty contorting into something venomous. "That thing is no child of mine," she spat, her words dripping with disgust. "It's a monstrosity, a stain on our name." Roland's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence a heavy acquiescence to his wife's will. The storm outside roared, lightning fracturing the sky as if in protest. Eleanor's mind raced, her thoughts a tangle of fear and calculation. The Vandermeer name was synonymous with purity, wealth, and untarnished prestige. A black child, even one born of her womb, would unravel that carefully woven tapestry. Gossip would spread like wildfire through the elite circles she ruled. Whispers of scandal, of tainted blood. She could already hear the pitying murmurs at galas, the sidelong glances at charity balls. No, this could not stand. Her decision was swift, as cold and unyielding as the diamonds on her fingers. In the dead of night, when the estate slept, Eleanor summoned Giles, the butler, a man whose loyalty was forged in years of silent service. His gaunt face betrayed no emotion as she issued her command. "Take it away," she whispered, her voice low and venomous. "Leave it somewhere far, where no one will trace it back to us. An alley, a doorstep, anywhere but here." She refused to look at the child, now named Yara, in a fleeting moment of obligation, as if naming her could absolve the sin of what came next. Giles nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor, and slipped into the nursery where Yara lay, her tiny chest rising and falling in innocent slumber. The rain fell in sheets as Giles carried the bundled infant through the city's underbelly, his black coat blending with the shadows. The alley he chose was narrow, reeking of decay, its cobblestones slick with grime. He placed Yara in a cardboard box, tucking the blanket around her to shield her from the cold. Her dark eyes fluttered open, wide and trusting, and for a moment Giles hesitated, his breath catching. But duty outweighed mercy. He turned and vanished into the storm, leaving the child to fate. Fate, however, had other plans. Clara, a maid in the Vandermeer household, had slipped out to fetch supplies, her worn coat barely keeping the rain at bay. She knew of Eleanor's delivery, had overheard the hushed excitement of twins, but as she passed the alley, a soft whimper stopped her in her tracks. Kneeling beside the box, she gasped, her heart lurching at the sight of Yara, her tiny fist clenched against the chill. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She knew instantly whose child this was. The rumors of Eleanor's cruelty had long circulated among the staff, but this was beyond imagining. Clara lifted Yara, cradling her against her chest, the warmth of her body soothing the infant's cries. She glanced around, half expecting Giles to emerge from the shadows, but the alley was empty. Her mind raced. She was unwed, her wages barely enough to cover rent in her cramped apartment. Yet as Yara's tiny hand grasped her finger, Clara felt a resolve harden within her. "You're mine now," she whispered, her voice trembling with defiance. She hurried home, the rain masking her tears, vowing to protect this child from the world that had rejected her. In the Vandermeer estate, dawn broke with deceptive calm. Ysmeine slept in her silver bassinet, unaware of the sister she would never know. Eleanor, her composure restored, sipped tea in the drawing room, her secret buried deep. Roland, consumed by business, asked no questions, trusting his wife's silence. But in a modest apartment across the city, Clara rocked Yara to sleep, humming a lullaby her own mother once sang. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered, setting the stage for a reckoning no one could foresee. The city pulsed with a rhythm of its own, split by invisible lines of wealth and want. In the Vandermeer mansion, perched atop a manicured hill, Ysmeine grew like a hothouse flower, her world a kaleidoscope of opulence. Now 18, she glided through ballrooms in gowns that cost more than most families earned in a year, her pale skin and golden curls drawing gasps from socialites. Her laughter, light but hollow, echoed in chandelier-lit halls, where champagne flowed and secrets simmered beneath polite smiles. Ysmeine was the darling of the elite, her beauty a currency she spent freely, unaware of the void beneath her gilded life. Her days were a blur of indulgence. Mornings began with breakfast trays of exotic fruits and pastries, served by silent maids who faded into the wallpaper. Afternoons melted into shopping sprees on avenues lined with boutiques, where Ysmeine amassed silk scarves, sapphire earrings, and handbags monogrammed with her initials. Nights belonged to the city's pulsing clubs, where she danced under strobe lights, her entourage of admirers trailing like moths to a flame. She craved the spotlight, the rush of being wanted, yet her heart remained restless, chasing thrills to drown a nagging emptiness. Her father, Roland, saw only his perfect daughter, dismissing her late-night escapades as youthful exuberance. Eleanor, ever the orchestrator, curated Ysmeine's image, ensuring no scandal tarnished the Vandermeer name. But Ysmeine's recklessness grew, a storm brewing in her careless laughter, her eyes glinting with defiance as she flirted with danger. Fast cars, questionable friends, and bottles of forbidden liquor stashed in her velvet purse. Across the city, in a crumbling tenement where paint peeled like old skin, Yara thrived in a different world. Now 18, she moved with a quiet strength, her dark skin radiant against the faded backdrop of Clara's apartment. The space was small, its linoleum floors scuffed, its walls adorned with thrift store art and photos of Yara's milestones, her first bike, her spelling bee trophy, her high school graduation. Clara, her adoptive mother, worked double shifts at a diner, her hands rough from years of scrubbing dishes. Yet her smile never wavered when she tucked Yara into bed with stories of courage and dreams. "You're meant for big things," Clara would whisper, her voice a lighthouse in Yara's heart. Yara absorbed Clara's lessons like a sponge, her mind sharp and hungry. School was her sanctuary, where she devoured books on science, history, and business, her grades earning scholarships that promised a future beyond the tenement's cracked windows. But Yara's brilliance went beyond academics. She had a spark, a way of seeing patterns where others saw chaos, a gift for turning ideas into action. By 16, she was tutoring younger kids in the neighborhood, organizing book drives, and volunteering at a community center. Her peers admired her, not just for her intellect, but for her kindness, the way she listened with eyes that held no judgment. Yet Yara carried a quiet curiosity about her origins, a faint ache for the mother who'd left her in that rain-soaked alley. Clara never lied, but her answers were gentle, sparing Yara the full weight of Eleanor's cruelty. At 18, Yara won a prestigious internship at Horizon Innovations, a tech startup disrupting the industry. Her knack for strategy caught the eye of the CEO who mentored her, recognizing a rare talent. By 22, Yara had climbed to a leadership role, and by 28, she was named CEO, her vision steering Horizon to new heights. Her office, sleek with glass and steel, overlooked the city, a far cry from the tenement's flickering lights. Yara's days were filled with board meetings, product launches, and late-night strategy sessions, yet she never lost her grounding. She sent half her paycheck to Clara, paid for local kids' school supplies, and taught self-defense classes on weekends, her black belt in karate a testament to her discipline. Her beauty, ebony skin, high cheekbones, eyes like polished onyx, turned heads, but it was her presence, calm yet commanding, that left a lasting mark. Ysmeine's world, meanwhile, began to fray at the edges. Her nights grew wilder, her circle tighter with enablers who fed her ego and her vices. A tabloid caught her stumbling out of a club, her mascara streaked, a bottle in hand. Eleanor swept the story under the rug with a well-placed donation, but Ysmeine's defiance only sharpened. She crashed a borrowed sports car, laughed off a shoplifting charge, and ignored Roland's pleas to slow down. Her beauty, once her shield, now masked a growing addiction to the chaos she courted. Her life a high-wire act with no safety net. Yara, in contrast, built her life on solid ground. Her evenings often ended with Clara, the two sharing tea in their tiny kitchen, laughing over old memories. Yara's dreams were big but tethered to purpose. She wanted Horizon to innovate for the underserved, to bridge gaps she'd known too well. Her heart, though, held a quiet space for questions about her past, a puzzle she hadn't yet dared to solve. The city stretched between the two sisters, its skyscrapers and slums a divide neither knew existed. Ysmeine danced on the edge of ruin, while Yara rose like a star, their worlds orbiting in blissful ignorance, destined for a collision that would shake their foundations. The city's skyline glittered like a constellation of ambition, its lights casting a warm glow over the rooftop restaurant where power and promise converged. Yara sat at a corner table, her tailored blazer sharp against the soft linen cloth, her ebony skin catching the flicker of candlelight. At 28, she was a force, the CEO of Horizon Innovations, her presence both poised and magnetic. Tonight, she was here to seal a partnership that could catapult her company into the global spotlight. Across from her sat Roland van der Meer, the formidable chairman of Van der Meer Enterprises, his silver hair and piercing gaze commanding the room. The air buzzed with anticipation, a deal worth millions hanging in the balance. But beneath the surface, fate was weaving a subtler thread. Yara opened the conversation with a quiet confidence, her voice steady as she outlined Horizon's vision. Technology that empowered the underserved, innovation rooted in equity. Roland listened intently, his fingers steepled, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. There was something familiar in her cadence, the way she tilted her head when emphasizing a point, the measured grace of her gestures. It wasn't just her words, though, they were sharp and compelling. It was her essence, a mirror to his instincts honed over decades of deal-making. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on her pitch, but it lingered like a half-remembered dream. The waiter arrived with plates of seared scallops and crisp wine, breaking the tension. Yara sipped her Chardonnay, her movements deliberate, and Roland found himself watching her again. The way she held her glass, the subtle arch of her brow when she smiled. It was uncanny, like seeing his younger self in a stranger's face. He cleared his throat, steering the talk to numbers. Yara countered with projections, her data flawless, her arguments airtight. By the time dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate torte, Roland was impressed, a rare feat for a man who'd seen countless pitches. "You've got a gift," he said, leaning back. "Not just for business, but for presence. Yara smiled, her eyes warm but guarded. Thank you, Mr. Vandermeer. I learned from necessity. Her words carried a weight Roland couldn't place, a hint of a story untold. Curiosity tugged at him, and as the waiter cleared the plates, he ventured a personal question. Where did you grow up, Yara? What shaped you? The question was casual, but his gaze was sharp, searching. Yara paused, her fork hovering over the tort. She wasn't one to share easily, but Roland's sincerity disarmed her. I was raised by a single woman, Clara, in a small apartment downtown, she said. She wasn't my biological mother, but she's my everything. She adopted me when I was a baby. Roland's fork stilled, his pulse quickening. Adopted? He echoed, his voice low. Yara nodded, her expression soft. Clara never married, never had kids of her own. She found me, well, she saved me. I don't know much about my birth parents. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Roland's mind raced. Clara. The name struck a chord, a faint memory of a quiet maid who'd worked in his household years ago, her presence unassuming yet kind. Why would a childless woman adopt? And why did Yara's face, her mannerisms, feel like a ghost from his own reflection? He leaned forward, his voice careful. Clara, did she ever mention where she found you? Yara's brow furrowed, sensing the shift in his tone. Not much, she admitted. She said it was a rainy night in an alley. She never gave details, said it didn't matter, only that I was hers. Roland's breath caught, a chill creeping up his spine. An alley, a rainy night. The pieces didn't fit, not yet, but they were close, too close. His mind flashed to Eleanor's secrecy after the twins' birth, the way she'd dismissed questions about the second child. He'd trusted her, buried his doubts in work, but now they clawed their way back. Yara sensed his unease, her instincts sharp. Is something wrong, Mr. Vandermeer? She asked, her voice gentle but probing. Roland forced a smile, shaking his head. No, just, you remind me of someone, he said, the lie tasting bitter. He couldn't voice the suspicion forming, not yet. The deal was signed, signatures scrawled on crisp paper. But Roland's thoughts were elsewhere. As Yara stood to leave, her handshake firm, he held her gaze a moment longer. Let's stay in touch, he said, his tone carrying a weight she couldn't decipher. She nodded, her smile polite, and walked away, her silhouette fading into the city's glow. Roland lingered at the table, the restaurant's hum fading to a dull roar. His mind churned, piecing together fragments. Clara's name, Yara's story, the twin he'd barely glimpsed before Eleanor's decree. He called his assistant, his voice urgent. Find Clara, the maid who worked for us 28 years ago. I need her address now. The city stretched out below, its lights a map of secrets, and Roland knew he was on the edge of unraveling one. Yara, unaware, stepped into the elevator, her thoughts on the deal, oblivious to the storm gathering in her wake. The night held its breath, destiny tightening its grip. The city wore a shroud of dusk, its streets slick with the day's last rain, as Roland's black sedan cut through the evening. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, his mind a storm of questions that had festered since his dinner with Yara. Clara's name, her story of finding a child in an alley, had cracked open a vault of doubts he'd buried decades ago. The Vandermeer estate, with its gilded facade, had always been Eleanor's domain, her secrets woven into its walls. But tonight, Roland sought answers, and they lay not in marble halls but in a run-down tenement across the city. Clara's apartment was on the fourth floor of a building that sagged with age, its stairwell smelling of mildew and yesterday's meals. Roland, in his tailored coat, looked out of place, a king stepping into a world of want. He knocked, the sound sharp against the peeling door. Clara opened it, her face weathered but kind, her eyes widening at the sight of her former employer. Mr. Vandermeer, she whispered, stepping back, her hands smoothing her faded apron. The room was small, cluttered with love. A worn couch, a shelf of Yara's trophies, a single lily in a cracked vase. Roland's throat tightened. This was no place for lies. I need the truth, Clara, he said, his voice low but unyielding. About Yara. Where did you find her? Clara's gaze dropped, her fingers twisting together. She gestured to a chair, but Roland stood, his presence filling the room. She sighed, her shoulders sagging, as if unburdening a weight carried for decades. "It was a rainy night, 28 years ago," she began, her voice trembling. "I was coming back from the market, passing an alley near the old mill. I heard a cry, faint, like a kitten. There she was, a baby, in a cardboard box wrapped in a blanket. She was perfect, but alone, shivering." Clara's eyes glistened, her voice breaking. "I knew she was yours, sir. I'd heard about the twins, seen Lady Eleanor's coldness. I couldn't leave her there." Roland's breath caught, his heart a drumbeat against his ribs. "Mine?" he echoed, the word a blade. Clara nodded, tears spilling. "Giles, the butler, was there, slipping away. I recognized his coat. I knew it was her doing. Lady Eleanor. She didn't want that child, not with her dark skin." The room seemed to shrink, the air heavy with the weight of betrayal. Roland's mind flashed to Eleanor's icy composure after the birth, her refusal to speak of the second twin. He'd trusted her, drowned his unease in work, but Clara's words tore that trust to shreds. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, his voice raw. Clara met his gaze, unflinching. "I was a maid, sir. Who'd believe me against her? I took Yara, raised her as mine. She's my daughter now, in every way that matters." Roland paced, his polished shoes scuffing the linoleum. The truth was a wound, bleeding memories he'd ignored. Eleanor's hurried whispers to Giles, the nursery with only one bassinet. He stopped, his voice a growl. "I need to see her." Clara hesitated, protective, but nodded. "She's not here, but I'll tell her you came. Be gentle, sir. She doesn't know the half of it." Roland left, his mind a furnace, the city's lights blurring as he drove to the estate, where answers awaited in a colder heart. The Vandermeer mansion was silent, its grandeur mocking as Roland stormed into the drawing room. Eleanor sat by the fireplace, a glass of sherry in hand, her face a mask of serene control. Ysmeine was absent, likely lost in another nightclub's haze. "Eleanor," Roland said, his voice a thunderclap. She turned, her smile faltering at his expression. "What's wrong, darling?" she asked, her tone honeyed. He stepped closer, his eyes burning. "Yara, the twin you said was stillborn. She's alive, isn't she?" Eleanor's glass trembled, sherry sloshing, but she recovered, her laugh brittle. "Stillborn? You're confused, Roland. There was only Ysmeine." "Don't lie to me," he roared, slamming his fist on the mantel. The room quaked, a vase toppling. "Clara told me everything. Giles, the alley, your orders. You threw her away because of her skin." Eleanor's composure shattered, her face paling. "You don't understand," she hissed, standing, her silk robe swirling. "She was a scandal, a threat to our name. I did what was necessary." Roland's heart twisted, love curdling into disgust. "Necessary? She was our daughter." Eleanor's eyes flashed, unrepentant. "She was a mistake." The word hung like a guillotine. Roland turned, his decision made. He found Yara the next day, at Horizon's sleek office, her desk strewn with plans. She rose, surprised as he entered, his face etched with pain. "Yara," he said, voice breaking, "I'm your father. You were taken from me, but I've found you." Yara froze, her world tilting, her eyes searching his for truth. Before she could speak, he continued, "Come with me. You belong with us." Against her instincts, she followed, stepping into the mansion where Eleanor's icy stare and Ysmeine's forced smile awaited. The truth was out, but its cost was only beginning to unfold. The Vandermeer mansion gleamed like a fortress of glass and gold. But within its walls, Yara felt like an intruder in a stranger's dream. The air was heavy with unspoken tensions, the chandeliers casting cold light on polished floors that seemed to whisper her unworthiness. At 28, Yara was a titan in her own right, the CEO of Horizon Innovations, her intellect and resolve forged in Clara's humble apartment. Yet here in the opulent cage of her biological family, she was a curiosity, a puzzle that neither Eleanor nor Ysmeine wished to solve. Roland, her father, was her anchor, his pride in her a quiet fire. but his frequent business trips left her exposed to the venom of those who saw her as an outsider. Dinner was a battlefield, the mahogany table a stage for silent warfare. When Roland was away, Eleanor presided like a queen, her silver hair immaculate, her smile sharp as shards of ice. Ysmeine, now 28 and radiant in a designer dress, sat opposite Yara, her pale beauty a stark contrast to Yara's rich ebony glow. The clink of crystal and silver filled the silence, but the air crackled with disdain. "Pass the wine, dear," Eleanor said to Ysmeine, her eyes sliding past Yara as if she were a ghost. Yara's jaw tightened, her fork poised over a plate of untouched quail. She'd faced boardroom skeptics and cutthroat competitors, but this, being erased in her own father's home, cut deeper. Ysmeine's voice broke the quiet, laced with honeyed malice. "So, Yara, do they teach table manners in wherever you grew up?" Her lips curled, a challenge disguised as a jest. The maids, hovering like shadows, froze, their eyes darting to the floor. Eleanor's chuckle was a blade, slicing through Yara's composure. "Oh, Ysmeine, don't tease. I'm sure she's doing her best." Yara's fingers curled around her napkin, her voice steady but low. "I grew up with love, Ysmeine. Manners came with it. Perhaps you missed that lesson." The room stilled, Ysmeine's smile faltering, but Eleanor's gaze turned glacial. "Bold words for a guest," she said. The word guest, a deliberate barb. Yara endured these nightly assaults, her resilience a shield, but the mansion's luxury felt like a gilded trap. Her room, with its silk drapes and four-poster bed, was a far cry from Clara's cozy apartment. Yet she longed for the warmth of that cramped kitchen, the laughter over burnt toast. She called Clara nightly, her voice softening as she shared the day's slights. "They don't want me here," she admitted once, her throat tight. Clara's reply was fierce. "You're not there for them, Yara. You're there for you, for your truth." Those words became her mantra, grounding her as she navigated the mansion's cold currents. Roland's return brought a reprieve, his presence a buffer against Eleanor's scorn. Over breakfast, he offered Yara the CEO role at Vandermeer Enterprises, his eyes alight with belief. "You're the future of this company," he said, his hand on hers. "Your vision, your drive, it's what we need." Yara hesitated, the weight of the offer pressing against her loyalty to Horizon, but she saw the chance to prove herself, to carve a place in this family that rejected her. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm, though her heart quaked at the challenge. As CEO, Yara was a whirlwind. She restructured divisions, launched bold initiatives, and championed diversity in a company long steeped in elitism. Her strategies, data-driven, inclusive, fearless, drove profits to record highs, her name whispered in boardrooms with awe. Employees initially skeptical rallied behind her, drawn to her empathy and clarity. She worked late, her office a sanctuary of purpose, her black belt in karate a quiet reminder of her strength. The business world took notice. Articles praising her as a rising star, her face gracing industry magazines. The Young CEO Award, a coveted honor, was announced, and Yara's name topped the list, a testament to her meteoric rise. But at home, her success only sharpened Eleanor's disdain. "She's overreaching," Eleanor muttered to Ysmeine one evening, unaware Yara lingered in the hall. "A novelty, nothing more." Ysmeine's laugh was cruel. "Let her have her moment. She'll crash soon enough." Yara's fists clenched, but she walked away, her resolve hardening. She wasn't here to win their love. She was here to claim her place. Yet the isolation gnawed at her. She missed Clara's hugs, the simplicity of their life, the freedom to be herself without scrutiny. The night before the awards ceremony, Yara stood on the mansion's balcony, the city sprawling below like a sea of stars. She clutched her phone, Clara's voice a lifeline through the speaker. "You're enough, Yara," Clara said. "Always have been." Yara's eyes stung, but she nodded, the weight of her journey settling in her bones. She was a daughter of two worlds, caught between love and loathing, and tomorrow she'd face the spotlight, not as Eleanor's outcast or Ysmeine's rival, but as Yara, unbreakable. The mansion loomed behind her, its shadows long, but Yara's gaze was forward, her heart steeled for the trials yet to come. The grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel shimmered under a constellation of chandeliers, their light dancing on gilded walls and polished marble floors. The air buzzed with the hum of power, executives in tailored suits, journalists with poised pens, and philanthropists draped in elegance, all gathered for the young CEO award ceremony. Yara stood backstage, her ebony skin radiant against a sleek emerald gown that hugged her frame like a second skin. At 28, she was a beacon of achievement, her leadership at Vandermeer Enterprises having shattered records and expectations. Yet as the crowd's murmurs filtered through the velvet curtain, her heart raced, not with nerves, but with the weight of a truth she was about to unveil. The stage was a sea of light, the podium a solitary island. Yara stepped forward, her heels clicking with purpose, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. Roland sat in the front row, his silver hair catching the glow, his pride evident in the curve of his smile. Beside him, Eleanor sat rigid, her ivory dress as cold as her expression, her fingers clutching a pearl clutch like a shield. Ysmeine, in a glittering silver gown, leaned back, her smirk a blade disguised as amusement. The audience hushed, their anticipation palpable, expecting a speech of corporate triumph. But Yara had other plans, her words honed like arrows, aimed at the heart of her story. "Ladies and gentlemen," Yara began, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the room's expectant silence. "This award is not just a recognition of success, but a testament to the shoulders we stand on." Her gaze softened, her thoughts drifting to a cramped apartment where love had been her first language. "I stand here because of a woman who chose me when the world did not. Clara, my mother, found me in an alley, a discarded infant, and gave me a home, a name, a future." The audience stirred, whispers rippling like wind through leaves. Eleanor's face tightened, her lips a thin line, while Roland's eyes glistened, his hands clasped tightly. Yara's voice grew stronger, each word a stone laid in a path of truth. "Clara taught me that worth isn't measured by wealth or status, but by the courage to love without condition. She worked double shifts, sacrificed her own dreams, so I could dream bigger. This award is hers, for her heart is the foundation of every step I've taken." The room erupted in applause, but Yara's eyes sought Eleanor, who stared ahead, unyielding, her facade cracking under the weight of Yara's gratitude. Ysmeine shifted, her smirk replaced by a scowl, her fingers digging into the armrest. Turning to Roland, Yara's tone warmed, though her words carried a quiet power. "I also thank my father, Roland Vandermeer, who gave me a chance to lead, to prove that talent knows no boundaries. His belief in me opened doors I never imagined." Roland nodded, his throat tight, his pride warring with the guilt of years lost. The audience clapped again, but Yara's silence was deliberate, her omission of Eleanor a deafening statement. The socialite's absence from her gratitude was a wound laid bare, and Eleanor's face flushed, her eyes darting to the exit as if plotting escape. The crowd expected more, a nod to the Vandermeer legacy perhaps, but Yara stepped back, her speech complete. The applause thundered, cameras flashing as she descended the stage, her heart lighter yet heavy with defiance. Backstage, reporters swarmed, but Yara slipped away, needing air, needing clarity. She found a quiet balcony, the city's skyline a canvas of stars, and let the moment settle. Her words had been a bridge to Clara, a reckoning for Eleanor, and a beacon for herself. In the ballroom, Eleanor rose abruptly, her heels clicking as she stormed toward the exit, her face a mask of humiliated fury. Guests parted, sensing her rage, but none dared speak. Ysmeine followed, her silver gown trailing like a comet's tail, her eyes burning with a jealousy that had festered into something darker. "She thinks she's better than us," Ysmeine hissed to a friend in the lobby, her voice venomous. "She'll regret this." Her mind churned, plotting a retaliation that would eclipse Yara's moment, her envy a fire that consumed reason. Roland lingered, accepting congratulations, but his thoughts were with Yara. He'd seen Eleanor's exit, felt the sting of Yara's speech, and knew the mansion's fragile peace was fracturing. He texted Yara, a simple message. "I'm proud of you." She read it on the balcony, her lips curving, but her heart ached for Clara, who hadn't been invited, her humble status barring her from this glittering world. Yara vowed to bring her mother to the next triumph, to share the spotlight with the woman who'd given her everything. As the ceremony wound down, Ysmeine slipped into a shadowed corner, her phone in hand, dialing a contact she'd used for less savory deeds. "I need something done," she whispered, her voice low, her plan taking shape. The city hummed below, oblivious to the storm brewing, as Yara stood tall, her victory a spark that would ignite both love and vengeance. The night closed around her, its secrets whispering of battles yet to come. The city exhaled a restless dawn, its skyline bruised with clouds that mirrored the turmoil brewing in the Vandermeer Empire. Yara's triumph at the Young CEO Award had cast a long shadow, her speech a spark that ignited hidden fires. The mansion, once a bastion of cold elegance, now simmered with discord, its polished surfaces reflecting the fractures beneath. Yara, at 28, stood at the heart of this storm, her ebony skin glowing with resolve, her heart torn between duty to her newfound father and the pull of the humble life she'd known with Clara. But the night's events were about to unravel a darker thread, one that would test her strength and reshape her path. Ysmeine's jealousy had festered into a venomous plan, conceived in the shadowed corners of the award ceremony. Her call to a shady contact had set a trap. Hired thugs tasked with kidnapping Yara, a brutal act meant to shatter her spirit and reclaim Ysmeine's stolen spotlight. The plan was set for a quiet street near Yara's office, where she often walked alone after late nights. But Ysmeine underestimated her twin, blind to the fire forged in Yara's years of survival. As dusk fell, Yara stepped out, her blazer swapped for a leather jacket, her senses sharp from years of karate training. The alley was narrow, the air thick with menace. When three figures emerged, their faces masked, their intent clear. Yara's pulse quickened, but her stance was steady, her black belt instincts kicking in. "Walk away," she warned, her voice low, her eyes locking onto the leader. He laughed, lunging with a knife, but Yara was faster. She sidestepped, her movements fluid, her fist connecting with his jaw in a crack that echoed off the walls. The second thug swung a pipe, but Yara ducked, her kick landing squarely in his gut, sending him sprawling. The third hesitated, then charged, only to meet Yara's elbow, a precise strike that dropped him cold. The fight was over in moments, the alley silent save for the thug's groans. Yara stood unscathed, her breath steady, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She didn't know who'd sent them, but the attack felt personal, a malice too sharp to be random. Word of the assault reached Roland through a loyal security chief who'd trailed Yara at his insistence. The chief's report was grim. The thugs, now in custody, had confessed to being hired by a woman matching Ysmeine's description. Roland's world tilted, his daughter's betrayal a wound deeper than Eleanor's lies. He confronted Ysmeine in the mansion's study, where she lounged with a glass of wine, her silver gown crumpled from a night of excess. "Did you do this?" he roared, his voice shaking the room. Ysmeine's smirk faded, her eyes darting, but denial was futile. Roland's investigators had dug deeper, uncovering her secret. A stash of drugs hidden in her suite, a habit that fueled her erratic descent. "You're my daughter," he said, his voice breaking, "but you've gone too far." Ysmeine's defiance crumbled, her face paling as Roland ordered her to a rehabilitation center, a secluded facility far from the city's temptations. "This isn't punishment," he said, his eyes wet. "It's a chance to save you." Ysmeine's screams echoed as security escorted her out, her beauty twisted by rage, her future uncertain. Roland sat alone, the weight of his failures as a father crushing him, but his resolve for Yara burned brighter. He needed to protect her, to make amends for the years stolen by Eleanor's cruelty. Yara, meanwhile, felt the mansion's walls closing in. Eleanor's icy silence at breakfast, her refusal to acknowledge Ysmeine's absence, was a reminder of the hostility that lingered. The attack had shaken Yara, not physically but emotionally, a sign that this gilded world was no home. She thought of Clara, of their tiny kitchen filled with laughter, of the love that needed no blood to bind. One evening, as the city glowed beyond her balcony, Yara made her choice. She packed a single bag, leaving the silk gowns and marble halls behind, and drove to Clara's tenement, her heart lifting with each mile. Clara opened the door, her face lighting up, her arms pulling Yara into a hug that erased the mansion's cold. "You're home," Clara whispered, her voice thick with tears. The apartment was unchanged, scuffed floors, thrift store art, the scent of chamomile tea, but to Yara, it was paradise. They sat late into the night, sharing stories. Yara's award now a framed photo on Clara's shelf. "I don't need their world," Yara said, her hand in Clara's. "I need this, us." Clara's smile was her answer, a beacon of unwavering love. Roland visited the next day, his sedan out of place in the tenement's lot. He stood in Clara's doorway, his face etched with regret. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft. "I wanted you with us, but I see now, you've always had a home." Yara nodded, her eyes warm but firm. "You're my father, and I'll always work for you, but my heart's here." Roland hugged her, his embrace fierce, and left with a promise to visit often. The city stretched between them, but its divide felt smaller, bridged by a bond that time couldn't break. Yara and Clara settled into their quiet life, their love a fortress against the world's storms. The city hummed with a restless pulse, its skyscrapers casting long shadows over the tenement where Yara and Clara had rebuilt their sanctuary. The air in their modest apartment was warm, scented with chamomile tea and the faint sweetness of fresh lilies Yara brought home each week. At 28, Yara was a paradox, a celebrated CEO whose name graced headlines, yet a daughter who found solace in the scuffed linoleum floors and thrift store art of Clara's home. The Vandermeer mansion, with its cold marble and sharper betrayals, was a fading echo, replaced by a life rooted in love that needed no blood to bind. But the city's undercurrents still whispered of unfinished stories, and Yara's journey to joy was a tapestry woven with quiet triumphs and lingering ghosts. Mornings began with laughter, Clara flipping pancakes in a skillet that had seen decades of breakfast, while Yara, in a cozy sweater, read industry reports at their wobbly kitchen table. The apartment, though small, was a universe of warmth. Photos of Yara's milestones lined the walls, her young CEO award framed beside Clara's faded watercolor of a sunflower. Yara's days were split between leading Vandermeer enterprises remotely and teaching karate at the community center, her black belt a symbol of the strength she shared with kids from her old neighborhood. Her presence, calm yet commanding, drew people to her, not for her fame, but for her heart, which listened as fiercely as it loved. Clara, now in her 50s, carried a quiet pride, her hands still rough from years at the diner, but softened by Yara's insistence on funding her early retirement. They spent evenings on the fire escape, the city's glow a backdrop to their stories. Clara's tales of her youth, Yara's dreams of tech that could uplift the forgotten. "You're changing the world, my girl," Clara said one night, her eyes shining. Yara squeezed her hand, her voice soft. "You changed mine first." Their bond was a fortress, unyielding against the world's judgments. But Yara's heart held a tender ache for Roland, her father, whose visits were a bridge between her past and present. Roland arrived weekly, his sleek sedan a curiosity in the tenement's lot. He'd shed his corporate armor, trading suits for sweaters, his silver hair catching the sun as he carried bags of groceries or books for Clara's shelf. His pride in Yara was a quiet fire, tempered by regret for the years lost to Eleanor's deception. Over tea, he listened to Yara's plans, new initiatives at Vandermeer, scholarships for underserved youth, and offered insights with a gentleness that belied his Titan status. "You're my legacy," he told her once, his voice thick. Yara smiled, her hand on his. "We're building it together." Yet he spoke little of Ysmeine, whose absence was a wound he carried in silence, her fate in rehab, a fragile hope he dared not voice. The city, meanwhile, buzzed with Yara's name. Her leadership had pushed Vandermeer to new heights, its inclusive policies and bold innovations earning global praise. Invitations to galas and summits flooded her inbox, but Yara preferred quieter victories, mentoring young women at the community center, funding Clara's dream of a local library. Her beauty, with high cheekbones and eyes like polished onyx, turned heads, but it was her authenticity that lingered, a light that drew strangers to share their stories. Yet the shadow of Ysmeine's betrayal lingered, a reminder of the cost of envy, though Yara chose forgiveness, hoping her twin might one day find peace. Eleanor, isolated in the mansion, had faded from relevance, her socialite crown tarnished by whispers of her cruelty. Yara heard of her through Roland. Eleanor's days spent in solitude, her galas unattended, her pride a crumbling throne. Yara felt no malice, only a distant pity for a woman who'd chosen hate over love. The city's elite, once her court, now celebrated Yara, their invitations a testament to her rise. But Yara declined most, her heart anchored to Clara's kitchen, where joy was measured in shared laughter, not glittering facades. One evening, as autumn painted the city gold, Yara and Clara hosted a small gathering. Neighbors, kids from the karate class, a few Vandermeer colleagues. The apartment overflowed with warmth, music spilling from a battered radio, plates piled with Clara's homemade empanadas. Roland arrived, his smile wide, joining the dance with a girl who called him Grandpa Roland. Yara watched, her heart full, the room a mosaic of her chosen family. Clara caught her eye, raising a glass. "To us," she mouthed, and Yara nodded, her throat tight with gratitude. As the night waned, Yara stepped onto the fire escape, the city's pulse a soft lullaby. She thought of Ysmeine, hoping rehab might heal her, of Eleanor, lost to her own choices, and of Roland, whose love had found her against all odds. But most of all, she thought of Clara, the mother who'd chosen her in an alley's rain. Yara's journey, fraught with trials, had led her here, to a happiness that gleamed brighter for its simplicity. The city stretched below, its stories endless. But Yara's was complete, a testament to love's enduring power. What a journey Yara and Clara shared, defying odds with love and resilience. What moved you most about their story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If this tale touched your heart, hit that subscribe button for more gripping stories, and share where you're watching from. Thank you for joining us, you incredible listeners. Stay kind, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next tale. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to catch every moment.